The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another webinar from the Food Industry Executive. We are joined here today by Nuxeo and are going to be talking about how you can own the digital shelf and strategies for the food and beverage companies. To start off, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you guys have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit those into the chat. We will be answering those at the end of the webinar. And additionally, if you miss part of the webinar or if you have colleagues that you think could get some value out of it, we will be recording the webinar and we'll be emailing that out to everybody that is registered today. So to start off, I'm going to go ahead and jump into an introduction of Nuxeo. Nuxeo partners with global food and beverage, fashion, apparel, and footwear companies to improve operational efficiencies that reduce time to market and increase revenue. The Nuxeo platform offers industry-leading product asset management capabilities aligned with enterprise scale, advanced search capabilities, sophisticated metadata management, artificial intelligence, and automated workflows. Unlike traditional digital asset management systems that are limited to photo and image libraries, the Nuxeo platform works with every type of content from videos to 3D texture maps, product information to project briefs. Find any asset you need regardless of where it's stored, digitize your prototyping, and sell in processes and accelerate your products to market. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce you to today's speaker. Alan Porter is an industry-leading content strategist and Nuxeo's Director of Product Marketing. He is the author of The Content Pool and a regular conference speaker, workshop leader, and writer on content marketing, content strategy, customer experience, brand management, and content and localization strategy. He's named one of the top 25 content strategy influencers and a digital strategy thought leader in 2016 and 2017. Alan is a catalyst for change with a strong track record in developing new ideas, embracing emerging technologies, and introducing operational improvements. When he's not at work, Alan makes even more creative content like comic books, including the official Cars graphic novels for Pixar and novels. With that, I will pass it over to you, Alan. We're super excited to have you here and looking forward to your presentation.
Cool. Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks to everybody who is taking time out to attend and listen live to today's presentation. I really appreciate you investing your time and listening to what we have to say, and sort of hopefully you will find the next few minutes useful, and it will provoke some thoughts and some ideas for you. So as we sort of title this is sort of owning the digital shelf, looking at strategies for food and beverage companies. But like every other presentation you probably ever sat through in the last 12 months, we're going to talk about a little bit about what's gone on in the last 18 months. You really can't avoid it. I was actually just joking earlier. This is actually the first presentation I've done from an office in 18 months. So things are starting to get back, but there's no denying that really the events of 2021 are going to have the events of 2020 are going to have an impact not only on this year, 2021, but other things going forward. So we really need to start thinking about how things have changed for the businesses, how things have changed for consumers, and are we actually just about to move into a new model of operating? I actually heard somebody refer to it as the coming sort of 3 to 4 years are actually going to be a consumer renaissance driven by the digital transformation of the last few years. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. We really are going to see a change in behavior, a change in business behavior, a change in consumer behavior, a change in buying behavior, which I think is going to become more of a hybrid model. It's not going to be everything digital or everything brick and mortar. I think there's going to be more of a merge where the customer experience is really going to be a continuum of both digital and physical, and it all working together. So we like to sort of think of that as from a food and beverage industry point of view and a retail point of view as thinking about the digital shelf. What we titled this talk about owning the digital shelf. So what do we mean by the digital shelf? Really what I mean is that combination of the ability to look at purchase goods online, or and then maybe have them picked up in the store and delivered, or maybe you know, just looking at what is in stock before you go to the store. You know, making sure that what is on the digital platforms, your e-commerce platforms, the websites, is actually reflected in the inventory at the brick and mortar store, or just understanding how we can actually take the information that we get from our own vendors and suppliers, pull that into our digital environments, make sure that we're delivering the right information to the customers in a seamless way, and bringing along all the data that goes with that. So it's not just about the pictures, it's about the content, and matching the content to the data. And I'll talk a bit more about that. So just this morning, a friend of mine sent me this image, which I thought was really well timed, because here I think we have a perfect example of what happens when that digital content supply chain breaks down and we're not owning the shelf, because here we have tomatoes highlighted that look awfully like potatoes. You know, tomatoes, potatoes, there's a little difference here. It may seem like a small thing, but he posted this all over his social media, naming the brand and the site he had this experience with. And yes, it was a bit of a, you know, thing to laugh about, but it's actually a fairly negative impact on that brand. And it was all over you know, his various social media accounts, and he was clearly emailing it to other people in the content industry as well. So, you know, it may seem like a small slip up, it may seem like it's nothing really that desperate, that clearly something is wrong with the metadata or the business information around that image, that allowed an e-commerce platform to pick up the wrong thing and assign the wrong image to the wrong product information. So this is not owning the digital shelf. We want to avoid instances like this. And I think really what drives some of those mistakes is that we're all trying to accelerate the speed to market. You mentioned in the intro, really that's what Nuxeo helps clients do. Our clients do is really accelerate speed to market by connecting their content to their business data and making it flow across the organization. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But you know, I think sometimes we drive too fast and we end up creating some of those little issues that really lead to the sort of incidences that I just showed on that previous slide. So when we talk about accelerating the time to market from a Nuxeo perspective, what we're actually talking about is making each step of the digital content supply chain more efficient. It may be that each step we just create a small saving, but as you actually add those together in a cumulative effect, it really has a massive impact in reducing the time to market and allowing us to speed to market. These are just some examples of some of the touch points that Nuxeo, working with our clients, has identified as areas within the digital content supply chain where connecting your assets to your rich media assets to your business information can drive really big changes. And it really starts right at the beginning. You know, often we think about rich media assets and things around that as just being, say, photography. It's more than that. We have to think about when we have an asset, when we have something that's about the product, what are the things that happened before it came to us? What information do we want to bring with it? And then when we add something or we create something, how does that get used further down the line? And what information do we need to deliver with the asset to make sure that it's correctly used? So we've sort of broken these down into three main areas around creation, making, and selling. There's probably more steps in the process, but we really find that these 7 areas are where we really find most of the potential problem areas. And that by thinking about your content and your business data as a holistic digital supply chain, you can actually really drive those sort of efficiencies, which helps speed time to market, which helps increase revenue, and you can get a lot more efficient. So what I'm going to do is basically walk through a 6-step to success process that we put together based on the work that we've been doing with our clients, where we think that if you think about these sort of things, not just individually, but actually also in terms of where they fit within that overall digital supply chain, you can develop a holistic viewpoint of how you can actually drive success by thinking about various ways to use your assets around the organization. So we're going to talk about ingredients libraries, utilizing your media assets. I've sort of touched on that a couple of times already. Having a holistic brand story, a way of applying machine learning to really mine the information that you've already got buried within your assets. Packaging design is important, and then how it sort of all feeds to the e-commerce platform. So really taking this idea of owning that digital shelf at the end by making sure that everything we do before that is leading to a good customer experience on an e-commerce platform or on a digital app that then links with the physical experience as well. So first off, ingredients libraries. You know, the more we talk to our clients, the more we've sort of come to realize that really ingredients libraries are a corporate asset. They're not just something that is listed and used by the people who create the products. You know, wanting to know the ingredients in a product goes all the way through that digital supply chain. You know, people who are putting together and managing the ingredients libraries need to be pulling information from multiple systems and being able to search and find things, feeding that into the design and creation of new products, bringing in new ingredients, spotting trends. We're seeing, you know, companies where they're actually pulling in pre-mixed ingredients or pre-configured groups of ingredients, and applying the metadata to enable you to find that information about the ingredients. You know, whether what products those ingredients have been used in, you know, whether they have had some sort of federal approval, whether they are an allergen, you know, whether they are a seasonal thing. You know, all that information needs to be pulled together in an ingredients library, which can then feed things like design, and all the way through to the app and the e-commerce platform, that when somebody's on the e-commerce platform and they want to do a search for you know, gluten-free ingredients or, you know, gluten-free pizza or whatever, they can find that information, and that is being driven all the way through the process, right from the ingredients library all the way through to the customer experience. So really thinking about the ingredients library as a corporate asset that can drive the rest of that content supply chain is key to really delivering a much better customer experience and a much better control of that shelf. Okay, and then we want to access and utilize the media assets. It's not just, you know, it's not just about going out and doing a photo shoot of a nice prepped meal or an ingredients or packaging or whatever. We actually want to make sure that we know what assets we already have. It's amazing how many companies have assets spread all around the organization. What tends to happen is if you can't find those assets, you can't, you know, did we do a photo shoot for this brunch item? I can't find it, we'll just go back and reshoot it. You know, we found experience that often if somebody can't find an image or a media asset, in 60% of the cases, they will go and recreate it. And sometimes that can cost tens of thousands of dollars if you think about rearranging a, you know, a photo shoot and getting all the samples and getting the materials together and, you know, booking studio time and photographers and all the stuff that goes with that. So, you know, knowing what you have can really help avoid expensive and inefficient duplication. You can start to coordinate across multiple creative suppliers. You know, you may have certain people who are really good at doing, you know, beverage shoots, other people who are good at doing food shoots, you know, people who do, you know, slow motion video and so forth. And then you can manage all that in centralize the management of your collections. You don't necessarily need to bring everything into one centralized asset management tool, as long as you've got something like this. One area where Nuxeo really plays well is we can actually manage the metadata spread across the organization and actually do federated searches across different platforms. So if you actually got multiple different asset management platforms already, we can sort of fit a layer across that. And that comes down to, again, making sure that you've got the right taxonomy and metadata around those images, so you don't end up by putting up a picture of potatoes when you're listing tomatoes. So, you know, thinking about the assets that you've got and how you're actually going to utilize them, and making sure that they've got that right taxonomy, the right wording around them, the right metadata, and that's managed from a central process, so you're not recreating stuff over and over again, can make a big difference. And again, if you're using existing photo shoots, or you're using existing assets or existing videos, you can actually speed up the time to market. You can reduce the amount of time it takes to put together a marketing campaign or some packaging images and stuff. And sort of central to that is thinking about how you're actually using those images to tell your story. Every brand should have a story. What is it we're in business for? You know, why should you be buying our particular brand of a beverage or a particular brand of food? Do we have a mission statement? What's our focus? You know, is it around farm to market? Is it around particular, you know, are we a specialist in, you know, packaged meats and proteins, whatever? But figure out, you know, what is the focus that you have, and then tell that story in a distinctive way. And importantly, keep it consistent. Again, this is part of that digital supply chain, is making sure that brand story goes along the digital supply chain, so everybody can work with it together, from, you know, figuring out our ingredients and how we want to pull our ingredients together, through to, you know, creating products, doing the packaging design, thinking holistically about what it is we want to do. So all the way through to that digital shelf, that brand mission and that brand promise is being delivered to the customers who want it. And the thing you have to think about is, you know, brand story is not just about marketing. Brand story is literally every interaction that a customer has with your company, be that the app, the packaging, the way it's shelved, down to, you know, if somebody has a, you know, wants to call a 1-800 number and ask a question about what ingredients are in this product, whether it's down to, you know, what's listed on the website, the recipes you put together, social media, that's all a reflection of your brand. And you need to think about that from the customer, outside in customer perspective, and think about how you're actually going to connect that. And again, that goes down from the connecting the digital platforms to the physical environment. Think about if you change the packaging on a product, is that reflected on your app? You know, so when somebody sees an item on an e-commerce platform and they go into the brick and mortar store and look at the shelf, are they actually going to recognize that it's the same product? Because if you've changed the packaging, the physical packaging, but not updated the digital platform, and that's happened to me a couple of times when I've actually not realized it's the same product. So you have to think about that, the whole digital supply chain, and be consistent with your brand story, and know what it is that you're actually in the market to do. Okay, and machine learning. I talked earlier about knowing what you have. Once you know what you have and what you put information together, you can use new technologies like AI and machine learning to really dive in and help build those metadata models. I talked a little bit about, you know, building that business information and metadata around what you have, be that the ingredients through to rich media assets, through to maybe customer information or supplier information or vendor information. Is how do you find that in the big library of assets that you've got spread around the company? One way to do that is with machine learning. Machine learning can really help do that mass update and mass mining of information to find your metadata models. It's accurate. It's a lot more accurate and consistent than humans are. Humans at best tend to be around 85% accurate and consistent. If you get subject matter experts looking at that sort of data, and depending on how you train it, machine learning can get up to close to 100%. It's consistent and it makes your information findable. There's a difference between able to search for something and able to find something. Being able to search for something just means that I know we've got it. Being able to find it means I know we've got it and I can use it. And it can actually also help generate links so you actually get the right information. Machine learning would know the difference between a potato and a tomato. So here's just a, you know, an example. There are a lot of really good generic commodity AI machine learning models out there. You could take this photograph and run it through those. And it would probably come back and tell you, obviously, that this is a food photograph. It's got wine in there. Maybe tell you it's an ocean view, and that maybe there's steak and lobster. These are all, you know, good things to know. But if you actually want to be much more specific about the things that matter to your business, you need an AI that you can teach the things that are specific to you and your needs. So at Nuxeo, we have a thing called Insight that fits on top of the Nuxeo platform, which really allows you to teach the AI engine, the things that are specific to your business. So if you put this through, it will maybe come back and actually tell you, based on the models that you've taught it with, that it actually knows the location, it knows the restaurant, knows what type of photograph it is, knows that maybe what type of menu item it is. It's a surf and turf, lunch, and even better, which products. And then you can link the products to things like SKUs, supplier codes, and so forth, and ingredient lists of what's on there. And again, really pull the value of what you actually have in your rich media. I talked about packaging a couple of times. So pulling a lot of this information together can really help with accelerating packaging design as well. If you've actually got, again, this combination of connecting your imagery and your rich media assets and your content with your business information, your vendor information, making sure it's correctly tagged and correctly identified allows you to do things like do virtual prototyping of your products and then preview it quickly and preview 3D designs, customize your designs. There's a lot more around, local brand labeling, where the same product has got multiple different variants of brand depending on which store it's sold in, or depending on which country it goes to, where you need to manage localization. So good asset management can include things like managing derivations, where you've got a base label, but then you've got different versions of it based on which market it goes in, different federal or national labeling requirements, different languages, different design parameters depending on which market it's going in. Also looking at how you actually pull that together. And as we mentioned up front, one of the things about Nuxeo is it allows you to manage very complex workflows, which can speed up approvals. Just to give an example, one of our retail clients, it used to take them 4 weeks to approve a new packaging design, and because it's a very complex thing, they can now do it within 4 hours, based on the workflow that we've got, because they're not shipping around all sorts of unnecessary files and doing things in parallel, or people being unaware of where things are in the workflow. So really sped up the packaging design approval, which again means that they were able to start to roll out global products simultaneously rather than doing a phased rollout as they were waiting for each market's labeling and packaging to be approved. So, and again, really this all comes to, as I say, in terms of owning the digital shelf, thinking about expanding your e-commerce channel. The pace of the food and beverage market is really continuing to accelerate. We've all experienced that over the last 12 to 18 months. I think it's going to keep going on. Thinking about the e-commerce channel really as not necessarily the endpoint, but sort of the penultimate endpoint, because as I mentioned, really it also needs to reflect what's happening in the physical world, but making sure that everything that you bring to your e-commerce platform is correct, is consistent, is linked up to things like supply. Making sure, just to give an example, I think last weekend my wife and I set up something online to go to the store and pick something up, and when we got to the store they were like, well, we don't have that in stock. But when we were on the e-commerce platform, we picked the 2 products and it asked us to select a store and gave us a pickup time, but clearly the e-commerce platform was not linked to the inventory platform that said what was in stock at particular stores, even though it asked us to pick a store. It was so that it sort of fell down in that e-commerce physical interface. So we have to think about that. One thing is very clear: people want imagery, people want video. Think back not that long ago, maybe 5-10 years ago, when you went to a major site like Amazon. It was very text driven, it was very menu driven. Now it's all photographs. Research that we've done in the retail market shows that 50 to 60% of people expect rich imagery that is relevant, engaging, and gives them the right information. They're looking for images and video first. So really, rich media assets really does drive online sales, even if you sometimes tag it wrong and get the wrong thing up there. And you can, if you're creating e-commerce assets, you can build across new channels all the time. You can take that information and push it out to new areas. So just to sort of summarize, in terms of Nuxeo, we consider really that what we do is place the rich media assets I talked about, the rich media assets that you already have at the center of the digital supply chain. And if there's something new coming out of this or something I want you to think about, it is that idea of a digital supply chain, of connecting your content, your data, and your assets across the organization, making sure that that flows all the way from ideas and materials libraries and ingredients libraries, all the way through to design, packaging, all the way through to customer facing environments and e-commerce platforms, so you can deliver those exceptional customer experiences that really is our only differentiator in the market today. So just to really summarize, thinking back to those 6 steps to success, really think about optimizing your ingredients libraries, realize it's a corporate asset that can drive everything else. Look at what media assets you've got, make sure you know what they are and how you can utilize them and how you can get the best information out. Create a brand story, think about it in a holistic point of view, make sure it's driven across every step of the customer experience. If you've got large amounts of data, think about applying things like machine learning to mine that and pull the information that you've got out of there, particularly the business specific information. Look at how you can accelerate your packaging design by managing variants and localization, and then really think about how you expand the use of your e-commerce platform through imagery, and actually also making sure that it's connected to the physical world outside of the digital environment. So that was it for the end of the formal presentation. If there are any questions or feedback, I would be delighted to answer any questions that have come in.
Yeah, Alan, we did have a couple of questions come in. The first one is, so all this sounds good in theory, but how do I figure out where to start in practical terms?
Find a area where there is a known business issue. So that could be, I'm going to keep picking on the potato-tomato one, but clearly they've got that company has a metadata tagging issue. So maybe they need to put together a project, go look at how that happened. What's the metadata? Is it happening anywhere else? Is it being reflected in the other areas? So find something where you can actually prove business value and get a return on investment. So that may be a small project, but when you're putting together that small project, think about where it fits within that digital supply chain. If we can solve this problem, what is in sort of downstream or upstream, what's happening in the rest of the organization that's feeding into that area? And then if we solve that problem, how does that affect things downstream, and how can we push that and make improvements that way? So really find something that is a definable, not too large area. I put those 7 points on the digital supply chain. Maybe you find one of those where there's a particular issue and focus in on that, but do it while keeping the want to think about it from a holistic point of view, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. And then we do have one more. Are there lessons that the food and bev industry can learn from other industries that have adopted this approach?
Yeah, definitely. We talked in the intro, a bit. We do a lot of work with consumer packaged goods and also the clothing, fashion industries, shoes, so forth. Look at what other retailers are doing, and actually look across, see what they're doing, see what approaches they're taking. Look at other people who are creating stuff in a industry that moves around the same sort of space and has that digital to physical aspect of it, has the equivalent of a digital shelf, and see what they're doing, and just sort of keep an open mind. One of the best ways to learn things is think about what you like to do as a consumer. What brands do you like to interact with? What brands, apps, and e-commerce platforms and digital experience do you like to work with? What are your favorite brands? What makes it your favorite brand? Are you doing the same sort of thing with your own brand at work? So, put your consumer hat on and think about what you like as a consumer, and then think about, are we delivering that to our own customers? And you can learn a lot from that.
All right, thank you. That's all we have for questions.
Thanks again for joining us today, Alan. I really appreciated the presentation. It was some great content, and thank you for all of you that were able to join. Again, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar, and if you guys haven't had a chance yet, highly recommend you go check out the Nuxeo website. They've got doing some cool and innovative things, and thanks again, Alan.
Thank you. Thanks for your time again, everybody.